Well, the 2018 World Cup is underway in Russia. The host country has won the opening game against Saudi Arabia. Hype is also building in the U.S. after we learned that America, Canada, Mexico will host the 2026 tournament. But despite some exciting news coming out of the soccer world, a new book is shedding light on corruption that's plagued FIFA. Red Card, how the U.S. blew the whistle on the world's biggest sports scandal, is giving us an inside look into what some call the largest scandal in sports history. It's published by Simon & Schuster, a division of CBS. Ken Bensinger is the author of Red Card and an investigative reporter for BuzzFeed. He joins me now on set. So, Ken, let's start with the World Cup in Russia. You know, it was fascinating that FIFA actually rated Russia's bid the riskiest to hold the 2018 World Cup. How did this happen?
Yeah, that's right. The obvious choice for this current World Cup would have been England. They were bidding for it. There was also Spain and Portugal were together, and Belgium and the Netherlands were bidding. All of them were better qualified across the board to host it, and ended up in Russia, which had terrible infrastructure, many problems. The answer is it looks like subterfuge got them there. There was very serious suspicions about what happened in that bid, and when FIFA went to investigate it, they found they couldn't because Russia informed them that all the computers with all the information had been returned and then destroyed, and there was nothing left, which is a really suspicious thing to do.
So fascinating.
Yeah.
You know, you write in this book that it was really 2015 when this FIFA scandal kind of came to a head. And it's not just a corruption scandal, it's labeled as the biggest scandal in sports history. Can you walk us through why that is?
I think, because it's incredibly far-reaching. The number of countries being touched. I mean, we've all seen different scandals, even Russia with the doping, for example, but when have we seen one that involves well over a dozen, maybe 24 countries, dozens and dozens of officials of soccer, of companies, corporations pleading guilty? It just goes on and on and on. It's enormous. And soccer is the most popular sport in the world with the most people who follow it. We're talking somewhere around 3 billion people worldwide, and it sort of touched all of them. So it's really giant. It's like an octopus with infinitely long tentacles.
An octopus with infinitely long tentacles. You know, a former American FIFA official, Chuck Blazer, hugely influential in bringing this scandal to everyone's attention. What can you tell us about his role?
Yeah, he's the ultimate suburban soccer dad, gone good and bad. He's the guy who, after the kids' soccer game, said, someday if I ever ran this thing, well, he did. He climbed from suburban New York soccer leagues to the top of the FIFA pyramid. He was one of 24 members of its executive committee and was incredibly influential, as you said. And to his credit are things like the Women's World Cup and a huge TV deal for Major League Soccer in the U.S. But he also was skimming millions of dollars from the game, and he wasn't paying taxes. And the IRS caught him. And when they caught him, they flipped him, and they made him a secret informant for their investigation. He wore a wire for the government for years, helping them bring down other people.
Years?
Years.
That is a huge sacrifice, many people would say, to sort of try to do to bring this down.
That's right. But, you know, when the feds have you up against the wall, it's not like you have a lot of choice. The choice is I'm going to go to jail or I'm going to help the government. And so he helped the government.
Interesting that you say that, because the New York Times reviewed this and said that Red and the FIFA scandal had many echoes of the Mueller special counsel investigation. Why is that?
Well, it's because there's a principal connection between the two, which is a guy named Christopher Steele and Russia, right? So Christopher Steele, who's very famous for the Trump dossier, actually was the man who kicked off the FIFA criminal investigation. In 2010, he was working for the English bid trying to get the World Cup.
Yeah.
And he discovered very unusual and troubling information about what Russia was up to. And after telling his client the English bid, he called up a source at the FBI in New York, asked him to come to London, and told him that something funny was going on in FIFA and with Russia. And that FBI agent went back to New York, opened the case, and that's how it began. Now, obviously, Christopher Steele is deeply connected to what's now the Mueller investigation. There's other pieces as well. Mueller was the head of the FBI at the time the FIFA case began and very much aware of it. So FIFA, as I mentioned earlier, like the octopus with long tentacles, is mixed up in all these things, and it intertwines everything.
You know, you mentioned the FBI, fired FBI Director James Comey actually makes an appearance in your book. What did he have to say?
So James Comey was the FBI Director by the time this investigation concluded and went public, as you mentioned, in 2015. So though Mueller was there when it began, it was Comey who was the head of the FBI when it broke into public view. And that day, May 27, 2015, it was James Comey, along with then Attorney General Loretta Lynch, who told the world about the case. And he called it an incredibly important scandal, and was one of the people who told us all about it.
Ken, before we went on air, you were telling me that this sort of stain, that since 1974, that this game has pretty much been a little dirty. The fact that Canada, Mexico, and the U.S. will host the 2026 World Cup, does that possibly lead to taking a little bit of the stain away?
I mean, I think for those who want to see a cleaner, a better sport, it's a huge relief that the United bid of U.S., Canada, Mexico got it. I think if Morocco had got it, it would have been a terrible sign. It would be very reminiscent of what happened with Qatar getting it, which is a country that, for many reasons, is ill-equipped to have it. The fact that it went to the U.S. and Canada and Mexico, want to give them credit, is a positive sign. It's a sign that FIFA's trying to get where it is or get beyond the demons of the past. But I think it's a little early to say that everything's fine now. I think we're a long way from it. I mean, today we saw images in Moscow of Vladimir Putin, Gianni Infantino, the head of FIFA, and the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia sitting next to each other. And the whole thing just reminds us of the intensely geopolitical nature of this and where the world politics are right now.
Do you ever see this game turning clean?
I think cleaner. I mean, we could argue that almost no gigantic commercial venture is perfectly clean, but I think FIFA has the possibility of getting cleaner. And I think they hold up the model of some American sports as a way that they'd like to be, and they realize that by being clean and transparent, they can actually make more money. So I think that's good, and it's important to remember who suffers when there's corruption. The people who suffer are the kids and the fans and the stakeholders who, in these countries, if you go to a South American soccer game, by example, the stadiums are terrible, the facilities are terrible, and the little kids don't even have a ball to play with. Those are the people who've lost out because of all the corruption, and those people deserve a chance to play, not just because they could be the next Messi, but just because sports are good. It's good to play sports. It makes people's lives better, and they've been deprived of that. And it would be great if the sport could clean up so that they could be involved.
I know, and so many of us, like myself, played in high school, and you want to pass that on to your kids, but then it's plagued with this whole thing. So, Ben, I'm so grateful that you could join us and bring your book to our audience as well.
Oh, it's a great pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You bet.